Lyle Anders adjusted his oxygen gauge as he took a long, slow look across the horizon. The planet he'd landed on, Quintara 4 they called it, was silent as death, yet shimmering with a strange beauty he hadn't encountered on any other world. His boots left deep impressions in the metallic sand, which glittered silver under the faint light of the distant sun. The nebula that stretched across the sky cast a shadow over everything, an ominous, pulsing purple that made the air feel thick with tension. He hadn't expected to feel nervous. This was, after all, just another exploratory survey. But there was something off here, something that prickled at the back of his neck, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. The rest of the team was back on the ship, finishing up their scans of the atmosphere. But Lyle had seen the way the readings had spiked, and curiosity had driven him down here alone. "Just a quick look," he muttered to himself, his voice muffled by his helmet. "A couple of scans, a few samples, then back to the ship. Nothing to worry about." Yet the silence pressed against him, thick and eerie. He checked his comms. "Captain Anders to base. Status update. I'm moving eastward toward what looks like an anomalous rock formation. Well, you'll see when I transmit the visuals," he said, tapping a few buttons on his wrist pad. The rocky landscape stretched out, barren and untouched, punctuated by bizarre crystalline structures jutting out of the ground like jagged fangs. Static crackled in his ear, but no one replied. He frowned. "Base, do you read me?" Nothing. Just silence. His comms had never failed him before, but something here seemed to be blocking his transmission. "Damned tech," he muttered, shaking his head. "Well, guess I'm on my own for this one." He began to move deeper into the shimmering forest of crystals. Each one reflected his image back at him, stretching his reflection into eerie, distorted shapes that seemed to twist and ripple as he moved. Shadows flickered in the corners of his vision, but whenever he looked directly, there was nothing there. And then he saw her, a figure draped in dark, flowing robes that blended into the shadows. She was standing at the far end of a long, narrow canyon that seemed to emerge from nowhere, her silhouette sharp against the dim, pulsing light of the nebula. Lyle froze, his pulse quickening as he took in her presence. "Hello?" he called, his voice sounding small and tinny in the vast silence. She didn't respond. Instead, she raised a hand, a gesture so subtle he almost missed it. But he felt it, a sharp, sudden tug in his chest, as though an invisible string were pulling him toward her. Who are you?" he demanded, taking a step back, though his feet felt as if they were sinking into the ground. Her voice floated toward him, soft yet cold as ice, echoing strangely in the empty space. "You do not belong here, Lyle Anders." The sound of his own name made him stiffen. His fingers tightened around the strap of his oxygen pack as he scanned the woman's face. Her features were veiled, hidden beneath the shadows of her hood, but he could make out the glint of silver eyes beneath her dark, flowing cloak. "How do you know my name?" he asked, trying to keep his tone steady. She tilted her head, and he felt another sharp tug, this time deeper, as if she were reaching inside him, pulling at something hidden. "I know many things, Captain Anders, many things you do not." His mind raced, searching for any logical explanation. Perhaps she was another explorer, someone from a rival crew, or even a stranded colonist. But the way she spoke, the way her presence seemed to warp the very air around her, it unsettled him. "I'm here on a peaceful survey mission," he said, his voice steady, but his gaze wary. "If you need help, I can call for assistance. But if you're planning on causing trouble—" "Trouble?" She let out a laugh, a cold, eerie sound that echoed through the canyon. "No, Captain. Trouble follows you." Lyle's heart pounded. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you will." The ground beneath him shuddered, and he stumbled, catching himself on a nearby crystal formation. The woman took a step closer, her movement smooth and silent, her gaze never leaving him. "Stay back," he shouted, reaching for his sidearm. But as he drew it, his fingers froze mid-air. He tried to move, to pull the trigger, but his arm refused to obey. "Ah," she murmured, her voice thick with amusement. "Still trying to fight, I see, but it won't help you." With a flick of her wrist, he felt the invisible force wrap around him, coiling tighter like a serpent, immobilizing him completely. Panic rose within him as he struggled, but it was no use. Her power was absolute. "Who are you?" he gasped, straining against the unseen binds. The woman stepped closer until she was just a few feet away, her silver eyes glinting beneath her hood. "I am Kalara, and you, Captain, are now mine." He could hardly breathe, trapped as he was by her spell. Why are you doing this?" "Because you are the key," she whispered, her tone as final as a death knell. "The key to something ancient and powerful, something I have searched for centuries." Her words sent a shiver through him. "What do you mean?" But she only smiled, a small, enigmatic curve of her lips. "You will understand soon enough. For now you are bound to me." The pressure around him eased, but he still felt her power thrumming beneath the surface, coiled and ready to strike. She watched him, as if waiting for him to resist, to test her again. But he stayed still, his mind racing, struggling to piece together what little he knew. "So," he said finally, his voice hoarse, "you're not just some lost traveler, are you?" She chuckled, the sound as dark and cold as the nebula's light. "Lost? No, Captain. I know precisely where I am, and now, so do you." Lyle's gaze darted around, searching for any possible escape, but the path behind him seemed to have vanished, swallowed up by the shimmering canyon walls. "There's no way out," she said softly, as if reading his mind. "Not until I decide to let you go." "And when will that be?" She tilted her head, considering him, as though appraising some rare artifact. "When I have what I came here for, and not a moment sooner." A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the faint hum of the crystals around them, their soft, steady light casting strange shadows on Kalara's face. "Then you might as well tell me what you're looking for," he said, his voice filled with a defiance he didn't entirely feel. "Because I'm not going to help you otherwise." Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Oh, Captain," she murmured, her voice soft and almost tender. "We will see about that." And with a flick of her wrist, the canyon walls began to close in around them, shadows thickening as they surrounded him in an impenetrable darkness. Lyle's mind raced as the shadows closed around him, the walls of the canyon narrowing until they felt like a noose around his body. He struggled to see anything beyond Kalara's piercing silver gaze, which watched him with an intensity that both repelled and fascinated him. He was trapped, bound to this mysterious alien woman who seemed to carry all the power of the stars within her dark, silent form. He took a shaky breath, feeling the cold tendrils of her spell press tighter around his chest. "So, Kalara," he said, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "You've got me here, held tight under whatever magic that is. Now what?" She studied him in silence, tilting her head slightly as if pondering his worth. "The question is not what, Captain Anders," she replied, her voice as smooth and chilling as ice. "The question is, why?" "Why?" he echoed, feeling his pulse quicken. "If I'm just some pawn in your ancient quest, shouldn't you be the one with the answers?" She took a step closer, the faint light catching the glint of silver in her eyes. "Ah, but even a pawn must understand the game if he is to be of use." Lyle gritted his teeth. "Fine, enlighten me." Kalara lifted a hand, letting the dark fabric of her sleeve slip back to reveal a series of glowing symbols etched into her skin. The light pulsed faintly, casting an eerie shifting glow on her face. "Do you know what these are?" He peered closer, watching the symbols shift and pulse, like living things slumbering just beneath her skin. I've seen similar markings before. Symbols on old ruins, scattered across the galaxy, but they're ancient. No one even knows what they mean." Kalara smiled, a flicker of amusement glinting in her eyes. No one. But me. She traced a finger along one of the symbols, and Lyle felt a strange warmth radiate from her hand, a pulse of energy that seemed to vibrate in his bones. These marks are remnants of my people's legacy, a language so old, so powerful, that it reshapes reality itself. Each symbol holds an aspect of our world, a sliver of our history. He narrowed his eyes, trying to grasp the implications of her words. So you're, what? Some kind of guardian of this language? Her expression grew somber, and she lowered her hand. Guardian, perhaps, but also its last bearer. My people are gone, Captain, erased from existence by forces too powerful to reckon with, and all that remains of them is bound in me in these marks. Her voice softened, and for the first time he sensed a vulnerability beneath her hardened exterior. What does this have to do with me? He asked, a cautious edge in his voice. Because you, Captain Anders, possess the one thing I cannot reach, she replied, her eyes locking onto his. A piece of the past, a relic bound by my people's magic, a fragment that could restore what was lost. Lyle frowned. What are you talking about? I don't have any relics. I'm just a pilot, a surveyor. I'm not some chosen one or whatever you think I am. She raised an eyebrow, her smile sharp. And yet, the fragment is drawn to you, buried within your ship, hidden amidst your tools and trinkets. It may have come into your possession by accident, but it is yours nonetheless. He took a step back, his mind reeling. If that's true, then why not just take it yourself? You've got enough power to keep me here. Why can't you just reach out and grab it? She sighed, an odd mixture of frustration and resignation crossing her face. Because, Captain, the fragment is bound by ancient protections that respond only to the blood and touch of the one it has chosen. It will not respond to me, no matter how much power I wield. It rejects me. Lyle blinked, trying to absorb her words. So you think it's chosen me? Her gaze turned cold, almost accusatory. Not by any merit of your own, I assure you. The fragment recognizes something in you, something it was crafted to respond to. Perhaps a trait, a hidden potential, or perhaps mere chance. He crossed his arms, still skeptical. Sounds pretty convenient. Convenient? Her voice was sharper now, filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. There is nothing convenient about it, Captain. I have searched for centuries, scouring countless worlds, following endless trails to find this fragment. And now, fate, or folly, has delivered it into the hands of a man who does not even know its worth. Her frustration surprised him. Beneath her icy exterior there was a simmering desperation, a vulnerability that flickered in her gaze. All right, he said slowly. Let's say you're telling the truth. Let's say I do have this fragment on my ship. What exactly do you need me to do? Kalara's expression softened, as though his words had eased some unseen tension in her. The fragment is dormant now, but when awakened, it will resonate with the language of my people. It is a key, Captain, to unlocking the remnants of my world, to bringing back the knowledge and power that was lost, but it can only be wielded by one who forms a bond with it. He frowned. And you think I'm that person? She nodded, her gaze piercing. Yes, but I do not expect you to believe me, not fully. That is why you will see for yourself. Lyle hesitated, glancing back toward the empty canyon, then back at her. So, what? You want me to go back to my ship, bring the fragment here, and what? Hand it over to you? A small, knowing smile played at her lips. Not quite. You must carry it to the heart of this nebula. Only there will it awaken, and only there will you see its true purpose. Let me get this straight, he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. You're asking me to risk my life for a relic I don't even remember seeing, on the word of a woman who, as far as I know, could kill me with a snap of her fingers? Kalara's gaze softened, a glimmer of something almost hopeful in her eyes. I am asking you, Captain Anders, to help me restore what has been lost. If you do this, you will be free of me, free to return to your ship and leave this place behind. But if you refuse—" She didn't need to finish. He felt the weight of her threat in the air, an unspoken promise of what she could do if he turned away. Lyle exhaled slowly, searching her face, trying to find some shred of truth in her words. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" She nodded. "I am. This fragment, it is more than just a piece of my past. It is hope, a hope I have clung to for lifetimes, a hope that perhaps one day I may find peace." The raw emotion in her voice took him off guard. She was no ordinary alien, no simple wanderer of the stars. She was bound by something older, something fierce and unrelenting, a force that had driven her to the edges of the galaxy in search of a single, fragile chance. And somehow, he was part of that chance. Lyle ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the decision settling over him. He could turn back, walk away from her, find some way to shake off this strange enchantment and leave Quintara 4 behind forever. Or he could take the leap, trust this strange, enigmatic woman, and see where this path would lead. "So," he said, the hint of a grin tugging at his lips, "how does a man like me get started on an ancient, world-saving quest?" For the first time, Kalara's smile reached her eyes, softening her face in a way that made her seem almost human. "First, Captain," she said, her voice laced with a quiet resolve, "you let go of everything you think you know." But just as he began to let go, surrendering to the pull, a voice echoed in his mind, sharp and clear. "Do not forget yourself, Lyle. Stay anchored, or it will take you with it." It was Kalara's voice, steady and grounding. He clenched his hand around the fragment, focusing on her words, her presence. "Lyle." Her voice was closer now, filled with urgency. "Can you hear me?" He opened his eyes, feeling the immense power pulsing through him, tethered only by the thin thread of her voice. I can feel it, Kalara. It's like nothing I've ever known." "Yes." She stepped closer, her gaze intense. "You are holding the essence of an ancient world, Captain. Remember that." He nodded, barely able to focus, as the energy surged within him, filling him with knowledge, memories, voices that weren't his own. But amid the chaos, he felt a single thread connecting him to Kalara, a quiet, steady presence that anchored him to the present. "Kalara," he gasped, his voice raw. What am I supposed to do with all this?" "Let it guide you," she whispered, her gaze unwavering. "It will show you the way." And then, in a rush of understanding, he saw it. A vision of a world lost to time, a civilization that had once thrived in harmony with the stars, its people wise and powerful, guardians of secrets older than the universe itself. He could feel their knowledge seeping into him, filling him with a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. But then, a darker vision emerged, a memory of destruction, of a force that had wiped out Kalara's people, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. The fragment pulsed in his hand, echoing the cries of the lost, 1,000 voices reaching out to him, seeking justice, seeking vengeance, he whispered, feeling the anger, the grief of 1,000 souls. "They want vengeance, Kalara." "Yes," she said softly, her expression somber. "They were wronged, Captain, betrayed by those they trusted." He looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. "And you? You've been carrying this burden for them?" She nodded, her gaze steady. "I am the last of my kind, bound to protect their legacy, to ensure that one day their story would be told." She reached out, her hand brushing his. "But now, Lyle, that story belongs to you." The fragment pulsed one last time, and he felt the weight of her people's pain, their hopes and dreams, all pouring into him, becoming a part of him. The energy settled, quieting to a steady thrum, and he felt a strange calm wash over him. When he opened his eyes, he found Kalara watching him, her gaze soft, almost tender. "Thank you, Captain Anders." for carrying this burden. He swallowed, feeling the ache of their impending farewell. Kalara, is there no way for you to stay? She smiled, a sad, wistful smile. I am bound to my people, Lyle. I cannot stay, not in this form. He clenched his fist, feeling the fragment's cool weight. But I don't want you to go. Her hand rose, brushing his cheek, and he felt a warmth there, a fleeting touch that seemed to hold centuries of longing. You will not be alone, Lyle. I am with you, as long as you remember. A tear slipped down his cheek as she began to fade, her form dissolving into the shimmering energy around them. He felt her presence linger, a soft whisper in the back of his mind, and he clutched the fragment tightly, feeling the weight of her people's legacy settle over him. Kalara, he whispered, his voice choked. I'll remember, I promise. Her fading smile was the last thing he saw, her voice a quiet echo in his mind. Then you will never be alone, Lyle. Farewell. And then she was gone, leaving him alone in the heart of the nebula, the fragment's soft glow the only reminder of her presence. As they walked side by side through the strange, crystalline forest, Lyle couldn't help but glance at her from time to time, studying the way her cloak moved with an almost liquid grace, the subtle patterns of the symbols on her skin that seemed to shift in rhythm with her pulse. She was a riddle he couldn't solve, an enigma cloaked in shadow and purpose. So, Kalara, he said finally, breaking the silence, this journey we're on, is it dangerous? She gave him a look, one eyebrow arched. You are dealing with forces older than any you have encountered, Captain. Of course, it is dangerous. He nodded, swallowing back a mix of fear and excitement. And I suppose you're going to tell me that it'll take all my wits, all my courage to survive. She let out a quiet, almost amused laugh. Perhaps. But more than that, Captain Anders, it will take trust. The word lingered in the air, hanging between them like a fragile thread. He knew what she was asking, the leap she was urging him to take. And though he could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him, there was something about her that called to him, a magnetic pull he couldn't resist. All right, he said finally, his voice steady. Then let's see where this takes us. The heart of the nebula loomed ahead of them, a swirling vortex of colors and shadows, its energy crackling through the air like a live wire. Lyle felt the tension radiate from Kalara as they neared the threshold, her silver eyes reflecting the roiling hues of the nebula, her expression unreadable yet intense. They had walked in silence for what felt like hours, neither daring to break the fragile understanding that had formed between them. Lyle could feel the weight of her unspoken fears, her centuries of searching and waiting, all leading to this moment. When they finally stopped, she turned to face him, her expression fierce yet vulnerable. This is where you must decide, Captain Anders, she said, her voice steady but laced with a tension he hadn't heard before. Beyond this point, there is no going back. Lyle swallowed, feeling the gravity of her words. He glanced toward the shimmering abyss, his heart pounding. What exactly is going to happen, Kalara? She hesitated, as though choosing her words carefully. When the fragment awakens, it will resonate with the remnants of my people's magic. You will feel its pull, as I have felt it for lifetimes. She held his gaze, her expression earnest. But be warned, Lyle. The power it holds is immense, and if you cannot control it, it may consume you. A shiver ran through him at the thought. And you? What happens to you once it's activated? She lowered her gaze, her voice barely more than a whisper. I will no longer be needed. His heart skipped. What do you mean? The spell that binds me to this world, to this endless search, will end. I will be free, Captain, free from the weight of my people's lost legacy. She paused, her gaze distant. And free from this existence. He stared at her, realization dawning. Kalara, you mean you'll disappear? A faint smile touched her lips, a look of resignation in her eyes. Yes, Captain. Once the fragment's power is restored, my purpose here will end. I will return to the stars, to the essence of my people, and finally, rest. He felt a strange ache at the thought of her vanishing, leaving him alone with a piece of her past he could barely understand. "Are you sure this is what you want?" She looked at him, her eyes softening. "I have waited for centuries, Lyle. For someone to carry this burden, for someone to unlock the power I have protected for so long. You are my last hope." His chest tightened. She had kept him here, bound him by her power, but he could see the depth of her sacrifice, the centuries spent searching, the lonely path she'd walked for so long. And now, as he stood on the edge of this mystery, he felt the weight of her faith in him. "I'll do it, Kalara," he said quietly, his gaze steady. "I'll carry this for you." She gave a single nod, and with a flick of her wrist, the fragment he'd been carrying, the small obsidian shard that he'd hardly noticed, glowed faintly in his hand, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. "Step forward," she instructed, her voice soft, almost reverent. "Let the fragment connect with the energy of the nebula." He moved forward, feeling the shard pulse with growing intensity. The air grew heavy, charged with an electric force that sent shivers down his spine. He took a deep breath, reaching out to the swirling energy, letting the fragment guide him. And then he heard it, a low hum, a song that echoed in his mind, ancient and powerful, filling him with a warmth that felt strangely familiar. The energy of the nebula wrapped around him, pulling him into a space beyond time, beyond reality. A dead quiet filled the cockpit as Captain Ryan Voss sat, staring out into the void beyond the glass. His gloved hands clenched and unclenched rhythmically, a silent reflex in the face of empty space. He had drifted on this barren assignment for weeks, monitoring, mapping, reporting back data that he knew would never see daylight. "It's all rocks," he muttered to himself, his voice a low rasp against the thick silence. Ryan was a man used to loneliness, a veteran of the Solcom fleet. But this was another level, an assignment at the edge of known space, with nothing but lifeless planets and drifting debris, was not what he'd signed up for. He'd been itching for action, for purpose, not to be left in isolation at the mercy of his own thoughts. A series of soft beeps brought him back to the present. His sensors had picked up something, a faint blip among the usual background noise. "Ah," he murmured, leaning forward to scan the readings. His eyes squinted at the display. It wasn't anything he recognized, just a dark, irregular shape floating at the edge of his sensors. But there was something unsettling about it. Shadows clung to it, like it was more void than substance. "Command, this is Captain Voss." He spoke into the comm, his voice slightly hoarse, even though he knew they were out of range. "Picking up an unidentified object. Coordinates: 114.88 by 50.21 near asteroid belt TX-17. His voice faltered slightly as he added, "Engaging for closer investigation." The ship's engines hummed softly as he directed it toward the object, a small, cold thrill bubbling beneath his initial apprehension. Finally, something worth reporting, maybe even worth remembering. As he approached, his internal readings confirmed that it wasn't part of any known wreckage. The shape became clearer, a series of metallic shards, jagged edges splayed out like the frozen remnants of some organic creature. But this was no ordinary debris. And then he saw her. "Impossible," he whispered, his breath catching as he took in the sight through the porthole. The figure clung to the twisted structure, a humanoid form wrapped in metallic threads that glinted faintly against the weak starlight. Her head turned, slowly, deliberately, her eyes glowing with a faint phosphorescent light that pulsed in slow, irregular intervals. Every instinct screamed at him to look away, but he was caught in her gaze, transfixed. He reached for the intercom, swallowing the dryness in his throat. "Command, there's someone here. A woman, but—" He broke off, realizing how absurd it sounded. Suddenly the figure moved. Her limbs extended with eerie, inhuman precision, pushing off the wreckage and floating toward his cockpit with a grace that defied logic. "No," he breathed, instinctively pulling back in his seat, though the glass separated them. "What are you—" The silence between them thickened, tension vibrating in the thin atmosphere of his ship as she drew closer, her glowing eyes locked onto him. A voice, faint and hollow, brushed against his mind, though her lips hadn't moved. "You—" The word echoed in his head, like a thought that wasn't his own. "You cannot leave." His heart pounded as he grappled for an explanation, some shred of rationality to anchor himself. She was close now. So close he could make out the strange markings on her skin, a mosaic of scars and faint blue veins crisscrossing her ashen flesh. Her mouth finally moved, speaking in a low, raspy tone that filled the space around him, even though he was alone. "Who are you?" he managed to say, forcing himself to speak aloud as if that might break the spell. How are you even alive out here?" A small smile pulled at her cracked lips, one that was more unsettling than reassuring. "Alive is a word I no longer understand, nor should you." "Look, I don't know what game you're playing," he said, anger now flooding his voice to mask his fear. "But this is Solcom territory. I have every right to be here." Her eyes narrowed, those phosphorescent orbs flickering with something that almost resembled amusement. "Solcom territory," she repeated, mocking the words. "In a place of death and silence?" Ryan bristled, though he wasn't sure what nerve she'd struck. Something happened to you, didn't it?" he asked, his voice softening despite himself. "Some kind of accident?" She tilted her head, her smile fading as a faint glimmer of pain shadowed her expression. "Accident? Is that how your kind justifies destruction? By calling it an accident?" Her gaze bored into him, a piercing weight he could hardly bear. "Listen, I'm just trying to understand. You're human, aren't you?" Her laughter was like broken glass, echoing off the walls of his ship. "I was human once," she said softly, her voice laced with bitterness. "But that part of me was abandoned long ago." Something cold twisted in his stomach. What do you mean?" The woman paused, her gaze drifting away from him, her expression unreadable. "You wouldn't understand. Your world, it's all so clean, so innocent." Her voice dropped, a raw edge surfacing that made him feel a strange mixture of pity and dread. "I have watched stars burn out. I have seen planets devour their own children. This place, this void." She looked around them, as if the very darkness of space was her prison. "It is my home." His fingers itched to reach for the emergency thrusters, but something about her tone held him in place. "Why are you keeping me here?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you want?" Her gaze snapped back to him, a spark of intensity igniting in her eyes. "I need you to help me." The words tumbled out with a strange urgency, as if admitting it caused her physical pain. "You have something I no longer possess." Ryan narrowed his eyes, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "What could I possibly have that you need?" Her voice softened, almost a murmur. "A memory, a feeling, buried deep within you. It's a piece of something I have lost, and without it, I can never leave this place." He stared at her, trying to make sense of her words, but the meaning eluded him. That doesn't make any sense. Memories? Feelings?" He shook his head. "You're asking for something impossible." Her hand drifted to the glass, pressing against it as though she could somehow breach the barrier that separated them. "Perhaps it is impossible," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But if you refuse, then you'll never leave this void either." His heart thundered, but he couldn't look away. "What are you saying?" Her eyes held his, a deep well of sorrow and defiance staring back at him. "If you help me," she said slowly, "then I will let you go. But until then, You are bound here." "As I am," Rion took a shaky breath, every survival instinct urging him to fight, to break free of this strange, spectral figure. But his curiosity, his hunger for answers, was a force just as potent. He needed, to know the truth about this woman, about the bleak, death-haunted existence she spoke of. It was something he couldn't resist, even as every logical part of him screamed against it. "Fine," he said, the words slipping from his lips before he could fully consider it. "Tell me what you need me to do." A slow, solemn smile spread across her face, and he saw a flicker of something, relief maybe, in her gaze. "Then, Ryan Voss, welcome to your new mission." The weight of her gaze held him in place, and for a long, drawn-out moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the engines was a distant sound, a faint heartbeat against the vast silence pressing in from all sides. "New mission?" Ryan echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. The idea seemed absurd. He was an explorer, a map-maker of uncharted systems, not a rescuer, and certainly not for a ghostly alien woman drifting in the black. "Yes," she said, her voice laced with a strange resolve. "You seek the unknown, do you not?" She tilted her head slightly, her alien eyes gleaming with faint, unsettling light. "Well, Captain Rian Voss, I am the unknown, and now I am your charge." "Charge?" Ryan narrowed his eyes, suspicion creeping back into his voice. "You don't get to decide that." Her expression softened, almost imperceptibly, as if she'd heard an unspoken question. "You came looking for something, Captain," she murmured, "even if you don't yet know what it is." Ryan was silent, grappling with the disturbing clarity of her words. She wasn't wrong. Though he'd always chalked it up to wanderlust, an ache for new horizons, there was something deeper that had drawn him into space. The search for something he couldn't name. And now, somehow, this spectral figure floating before him felt like an answer. "Fine," he said finally, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "You need my help. What is it exactly that you want me to do?" A shadow crossed her face, and her eyes flickered to the vastness outside. "I want you to restore a memory," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange vulnerability, one that was lost long ago. "Restore?" He gave her a dubious look, fingers twitching on the control panel as though the familiar touch of the ship might ground him. "I'm an explorer, not a surgeon. How am I supposed to restore something in your head?" "It is not surgery that I seek," she replied, a hint of sadness in her voice. "It is something simpler, something deeper. A connection to what I once was, before this, half-life." Her words hung between them, and for a moment, Ryan was at a loss. He'd expected something concrete, something he could work with, a technical problem, a piece of alien technology he could tinker with. But a memory. "Look, if you want me to dig around in your mind, you're talking to the wrong guy," he said, his voice laced with frustration. "I don't even know your name." A long silence stretched between them, as if the question itself had caught her off guard. Slowly her lips parted, and she whispered, "In your language, it would be Talithra." "Talithra," he repeated, tasting the word. It was soft and strange, a name that seemed to carry a distant, haunting echo, as if it were less a word and more a memory itself. She nodded, her gaze steady. "Names are fragments, pieces of who we once were." Her voice dropped to a murmur. "But a name alone cannot free me. I need something more visceral." "More visceral?" Ryan shook his head, half in disbelief, half in wonder. "And what exactly is that supposed to mean?" "Memories, feelings," she replied, her voice like the soft whisper of silk against metal. "Fragments of humanity. They are what ground us, give us form. Without them—" Her hand drifted through the air, a faint shimmer of light trailing her fingertips. "We become shadows, Ryan let her words sink in, even as his mind struggled to wrap around them. "You're asking for emotions," he said finally. "I don't understand. You want me to feel something?" A faint, almost rueful smile crossed her face. "Yes," she murmured. "But not just any feeling. I need something ancient, something that resonates deep within." Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but she raised a hand, stopping him. "You misunderstand, Captain," she said, her voice gentle yet unyielding. "This isn't about some shallow exchange. This is about a bond, a merging of our experiences." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine, an instinctive rejection of the word bond. The idea of becoming linked to her, of allowing this strange, haunting figure into his inner self, was a step he hadn't anticipated. "Why should I trust you?" he said, his tone sharper than he intended. "How do I know this isn't some ploy, some way to, I don't know, possess me?" Talithra's gaze flickered, a faint tremor of hurt passing over her face, and for the first time, she seemed almost vulnerable. "I don't ask for trust, Captain," she whispered. "I only ask that you believe I am not what I once was, that I am something else, bound by chains I cannot break alone." Ryan studied her, his gaze flickering over her ghostly form, noting the way her features shifted subtly, almost like smoke beneath water. There was an alien beauty in her, a strange elegance that defied easy understanding, and yet there was a flicker of something familiar, something that hinted at a story deeper than the one she'd told him. "Fine," he said at last, leaning back in his seat, his voice edged with reluctant acceptance. "If we're doing this, then tell me what I need to do. I'm not going to let you crawl into my head without a damn good reason." A faint smile tugged at the corner of her mouth, and she inclined her head in a gesture of gratitude. "There is a ritual," she said softly, "a kind of communion, an exchange of memories and sensations, but it requires your consent. You must be willing to open your mind." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about a psychic link? Is that even possible between us?" She gave him a solemn nod. "Possible, yes, but it is dangerous. The risk is great." "Great for whom?" he asked, a wry edge creeping into his voice. "For both of us," she replied, her tone turning somber. "If our minds clash, it could shatter us both." Ryan let out a slow breath, weighing her words carefully. He didn't fully trust her, but he felt the pull of the unknown, a gnawing curiosity that was almost painful. Here, in the depths of uncharted space, he had stumbled upon something beyond his understanding, and the thrill of it was undeniable. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady. "Tell me how to start this ritual of yours." Talithra's eyes gleamed, and she moved closer to the glass, her hand pressing against it. "Place your hand here," she instructed softly, "and focus on a memory tied to your purpose, your drive to explore." Ryan hesitated, a sudden wave of self-consciousness washing over him. He could feel his pulse pounding as he lifted his gloved hand, pressing it against the cold glass. His thoughts drifted, sifting through fragments of his life until he found the memory. A day from his childhood, standing at the edge of a vast cliff, the wind whipping around him as he gazed out over an endless expanse of ocean. The feeling that surged through him then, the sheer awe, the hunger to see what lay beyond, that was the moment that had defined him. He felt a faint warmth, a tingling sensation spreading from his hand, as if his memory was pouring into the glass. Talithra closed her eyes, her expression softening, and a faint shimmer of light pulsed around her, growing brighter as she seemed to drink in the memory, absorbing it like sunlight. Her face twisted, a flicker of emotion crossing it, a look of sadness, of nostalgia that sent a shiver down Ryan's spine. "Yes," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I remember that feeling." Ryan blinked, startled. "You remember it?" Her gaze met his, and he saw a glimmer of tears in her eyes, something raw, and unguarded. "It has been so long since I felt anything but emptiness," she whispered. This connection, it is fragile, but it is enough." He pulled his hand back, shaken by the intensity of the moment. "So, what now?" She looked down, her expression thoughtful. "Now, we must strengthen the bond. There is one more memory I need." Ryan's heart pounded. "And what memory would that be?" Her gaze lifted, and her eyes met his, filled with a mixture of fear and longing. "A memory of loss," she whispered, her voice so quiet it was almost lost in the silence. "The moment when you realized that what you desired most was out of reach. I need to feel that ache." Ryan's throat tightened, and he felt an old buried pain rise within him. Images flashed before his eyes, a moment from years ago, watching a ship disappear into the stars, carrying with it the only person he had ever loved. Reluctantly, he lifted his hand to the glass once more, and Talithra's eyes softened, her gaze filled with a haunting compassion. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling as she reached her hand to match his. As his memories spilled into her, he felt a wave of emotion crash over him, a mingling of sorrow and strange unspoken understanding that went beyond words. In that moment, as they shared the raw ache of loss, a bond began to form between them, one that neither could fully grasp, yet neither could deny. The bond between them thrummed like a fragile, shimmering thread, tying their fates together in the emptiness of space. Captain Rian Voss could feel her memories now, flowing like water through his mind. Strange, otherworldly visions surfaced, an entire world, Talithra's world, shimmering under twin suns. He saw her people, their lives vibrant and beautiful, brimming with warmth and laughter, all shadowed by the dark fate that had transformed them. He was immersed in the memory of a vast, cataclysmic explosion, the one that had ripped apart her life, her world, her very existence. And through it all, he felt her anguish, her loss, and her fierce, unbreakable will. It was a memory that burned with unspeakable pain, yet one she clung to as fiercely as a drowning man clings to air. Why do you hold on to this?" Ryan whispered, his voice breaking as he struggled against the torrent of her emotions. "You've suffered more than anyone should have to. You could let go." Talithra's face softened, her eyes reflecting the distant light of her shattered past. "Because it is all that I am," she said softly. "Without these memories, I am nothing, a hollow ghost drifting in a sea of stars." Ryan reached for her hand, and though his fingers only brushed against the cold glass, he could feel a faint, phantom warmth, as if her presence had become something solid, tangible. He could no longer deny the strange connection they shared. It was as if, across the void of space, their souls had fused, each filling the emptiness in the other. "You have a choice, Talithra," he said, his voice steady. "You don't have to stay bound to this past. You can find a new beginning." Her gaze flickered, a mixture of hope and fear in her eyes. "A beginning?" she murmured, as though the word itself was foreign. "And where would such a beginning lead? There is nothing for me here, except for you." His heart pounded, each beat a reminder of the fragility of their situation. He wasn't sure if she was entirely real or if she was a specter created by his own mind, a vision born from isolation and desperation. But she was real enough to him now, and he couldn't leave her behind. "There's an answer," he said, a wild, reckless thought forming in his mind. "A way for you to be something more than a memory." She looked at him with a flicker of understanding, yet a faint fear clouded her gaze. "What are you suggesting, Captain?" she whispered, her voice trembling as if she already knew the answer. Ryan swallowed, steeling himself. "Let me take you back with me, to my world. We have technology, science. Maybe we can find a way to restore you, to give you a real body, not just this form." His words felt absurd, but his resolve was unwavering. If there was even a sliver of a chance, he had to try. A long silence stretched between them. Her face softened, her fingers brushing the glass in a delicate, almost human gesture. "But I am bound to this place," she said softly, a deep sorrow in her voice. "This void is my prison. I am tied to the remnants of my world, like a specter clinging to the ashes of its past." "Then we'll find a way to break those ties," Ryan replied, his voice fierce. "You don't deserve to be chained to this nightmare forever. You deserve more, a life, a chance to heal." Talithra's eyes widened, her expression shifting as hope flickered to life within her. She glanced away, as if afraid to let herself believe. And if it's impossible," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Ryan leaned closer, his face inches from the glass. "Then at least you won't be alone. I'm not going to leave you, Talithra. Not now." For a long moment she was silent, her gaze distant as she seemed to wrestle with emotions he could barely fathom. Finally, she met his eyes, her expression resolute. "Very well, Captain," she said, her voice steady, yet filled with a trembling vulnerability. "If you are willing to risk this, then I will join you. But know that if we fail, there is no turning back. We will be bound together, for eternity." A chill ran through him, but he nodded, his resolve unshaken. "Then let's begin." She reached out her hand, her fingers splayed against the glass, and he matched the gesture, feeling a warmth that defied all logic, pulsing through the barrier. A soft, silvery light began to glow between their hands, growing brighter, hotter until it enveloped them both, drawing them into a shared vision, a realm of pure memory, where their consciousnesses merged and mingled in an ethereal dance. In that moment, he felt her soul, the weight of centuries of sorrow, of memories she could never let go. He felt the shattered fragments of her life, her fears, her regrets, and beneath it all, a deep, unyielding hope. A hope that had survived even the end of her world. The light around them grew blinding, and he felt himself drifting, his mind merging with hers until he could no longer tell where he ended and she began. Images flashed before him, her world, her people, her final moments before the cataclysm. And then, a sudden intense vision burst into focus. He saw her as she once was, a woman with laughter in her eyes, a leader who had fought for her people, who had loved fiercely and protected with all her strength. But he also saw the moment of her transformation, the moment she was bound to this endless void. "Talithra," he whispered, his voice a gentle echo in the shared dreamscape. "This isn't your prison, it's your memory. You're holding on to this pain, but you can let it go. You can be free." She looked at him, her face softening with realization. I see it now. I don't need to be bound to this pain," she said, her voice trembling. "I can let go if you are with me." In that instant, the light exploded around them, filling every corner of the ship, every dark corner of space with a brilliant, blinding radiance. And as the light faded, Ryan found himself back in the cockpit, his hand still pressed against the glass. But she was gone. "No," he whispered, his heart sinking. He searched the void, his mind racing, desperate to feel her presence, to find even a trace of her. Talithra. Silence filled the cockpit, a cold, empty silence that gnawed at him. Had he imagined it all? Was she merely a hallucination, a fragment of his own mind conjured by isolation and longing? But then, a soft, faint whisper brushed against his thoughts, a presence so subtle it was like a breath in the dark. "I am here, Ryan. I am always with you. I am free. And so are you." The words echoed in his mind, a gentle warmth filling the emptiness she had left behind. He closed his eyes, a small, bittersweet smile crossing his lips. She had found her freedom at last, and though he would never see her again, he knew that a part of her would remain with him, a memory etched into his very soul, a bond that no distance, no darkness could ever sever. As he set his ship on course back to known space, he felt a new sense of purpose within him, a silent promise he would carry always.